Hey, welcome back to Watering the Seed. I am Coach D. Jackson, and today I want to ask you a few questions. But before we get into that, I want to welcome all of my new seeds. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have you with us. It's my prayer that you use today's episode, to become seed starters, start planting seeds of alignment and authenticity, purpose, you know, through mindset change and transformation, transforming into living a better way. And for my growing seeds, flourishing seeds, and thriving seeds, thank you for your continued support. My prayer is that you go out and be an example of a renewed mind, demonstrating, what it is to be aligned and authentic and living in your purpose, free from the patterns that hold you back and keep you in bondage, free from that and living a better way. So thank you all. Now, today we're going to talk about integrity. Yeah, that again. A few episodes back, I talked about integrity in a space for those who operate from titles or allow behavioral patterns that are rooted in insecurity, such as people praise or validation, false perceptions and fake identities. And that's really important. It is. So if you haven't listened, please go back and listen. It'll give you a better perspective. You can access previous episodes of Watering the Seed on our YouTube channel, or Spotify and Amazon Music platforms. I'll leave the links to the social media platforms in the description. And please like, follow, and or subscribe so that you can get the newest episodes when they post. All right, so today I'm going to talk about integrity, but I want to expand and develop integrity because it's less about behavior modification today and more about examining the condition of the heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's scripture. That's Proverbs 4 and 23. Everything, everything you do flows from it. Your heart. If you operate in jealousy, envy, anger, hatred, betrayal, deception, that's what's in your heart. It flows from it. If you operate from love, generosity, loyalty, fidelity, trustworthiness, faithfulness, that's what's in your heart. So, my question for you today are, and I want you to pause the episode and write these down so that you might reflect on them later. For now, let's just talk about it. Okay, let's go. My questions today are, how does praise or validation coming from others, your peers, etc., family, friends, whoever, how does that affect you? Even in the workplace, your bosses, your supervisors, your peers, your associates. How does that affect you? How does that praise or validation coming from them affect you? And then next question, do you work to receive that validation or praise? Do you work for it? Next question, do you find yourself working harder after someone notices you, after you receive that validation or praise? Do you find yourself working harder? And then lastly, and perhaps this is the hardest question, what happens when no one notices at all? What happens when nobody notices at all? Those questions may seem simple, but your answers, your answers reveal far more about your character than your accomplishments, okay? Oh, yeah. So today we're talking about integrity and not the kind people talk about, but the kind no one sees because integrity doesn't need an audience. Real integrity does not need an audience. It really doesn't. You see, many of us, including myself, was taught to believe that hardship reveals character, and it does. It does, but scripture teaches us something else that also reveals what's inside of us. Proverbs 27 and 21 says the crucible is for silver and the furnace is for gold, and a person is tested by their praise. Ooh. And a person is tested by their praise or validation. Okay, so that you are clear on what we're talking about. I love this imagery. The crucible. A crucible, which is a container or a pot, it holds something, right? But the scripture is saying a crucible subjects silver to intense heat. And let me explain this so that we gain an understanding and an overstanding of where to go with this, okay? So think about a silversmith making a beautiful piece of silver jewelry. Before the silver can be shaped into something valuable, it has to be placed into a special container called a crucible, right? And heated. It has to be heated extremely high temperatures, okay? And the heat causes the impurities hidden inside the silver to rise to the surface where they can then be removed. And only then can the silver become stronger and more pure and ready to be shaped. Okay? And just like that, praise and admiration, approval, or validation has a way of bringing hidden motives that we have within us to the surface. It reveals what's already in our hearts. I want to be clear. I want to be clear about something. Validation or praise. Validation, praise, whichever you want to call it, it doesn't create pride. It doesn't create insecurity or integrity. It doesn't. It simply reveals who we already are. Pressure reveals what you're made of. Praise, validation reveals what you're living for. A furnace purifies gold, very much like silver. Okay, gold doesn't come out of the ground looking like the beautiful jewelry we wear, on our bodies. It's mixed with dirt, rocks, and other types of metals. And before it can shine, it has to go into a furnace where it's exposed to, again, extremely high temperatures, extremely high heat. And as the gold melts, the impurities separate from it and rise to the surface. The dirt, the rocks, the metal, that stuff. Those are impurities. They separate from that gold. And it rises to the surface so that it can be removed. Okay? And that's why we have different carats of gold, from soft to strong. Okay? From yellow to white. All right. The fire doesn't create the gold. The gold is already there. The fire simply reveals how pure it really is. Heat doesn't create the metal seeds. It reveals its purity. The impurities, again, they rise to the surface, and then the silversmith removes them. And praise, validation works exactly the same way. Praise doesn't create pride, it exposes it. Praise doesn't create insecurity, it reveals it. Praise doesn't create integrity, it simply shows whether integrity was already living there. All right? Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's scripture, Proverbs 4 and 23. Now, most people think this verse simply means protect your heart or protect yourself from getting hurt. Okay? And that's true. That is true, but it's not the whole truth. And let me explain before you bite my head off. Let me explain. So the biblical word heart isn't referring only to your emotions. It's referring to the center of who you really are. You know, your motives, your desires, your convictions, your values, your character. Everything you do flows from whatever lives there. When the scripture says a person is tested by their praise, that's Proverbs 27:21. When a person is tested by their praise, what that is saying is something remarkable. It's saying praise doesn't change the heart, praise reveals the heart. Whatever you've been guarding, praise exposes it. Okay, validation exposes it, whatever you've been guarding. So beware, because everyone that guards their heart isn't always guarding the same things. So, what are they protecting? What are you protecting? Hmm. Well, thanks for asking. Let's go into it. So, a person of integrity guards. They guard their convictions. They guard their humility, their purpose, their honesty, their obedience, their compassion, and their values, because those things live in the heart. Those things flow out. So when praise or validation comes, a person of integrity will remain humble. And when praise doesn't come, they remain faithful. They continue to operate in those characteristics with conviction, with humility, with purpose, with honesty, with obedience, with compassion, with their values. They don't drop them. They continue to operate within them, whether they receive the praise or validation or not. And that's guarding the heart. A person who is lacking integrity, they often guard things like their image, their reputation, their ego, their pride, their status, their need for approval, their desire to be noticed. Yeah. Those things also live in the heart. So when praise comes, their pride grows. Yeah. When praise doesn't come, their peace disappears. Now, both people are guarding something. Understand that, understand that, overstand that. Both people are guarding something, those with integrity, those that lack integrity. But one is protecting their character, the other is protecting their image, right? So let me give you an example. Imagine two people planting a garden, right? One spends all of their time making the fence, beautiful. And I love working outside in the yard. I just so enjoy it. It gives me, a great sense of peace and accomplishment. Once everything is done and I stand back and it looks absolutely beautiful, it does something to my level of peace. Okay. And just being that it's nature, it just gives me a sense of humility and, gratitude, just being thankful and grateful for it. It's natural beauty. And I have the opportunity to, shape that and mold it. I prepare the soil in the fall so that when spring comes, the yard is healthy and it blossoms and it's full. And so getting back to the story, one spends all of their time making the fence beautiful. I mean, fresh paint and decorations and flowers. Everything looks amazing, okay? But they never care for the soil, right? The other person spends most of their time enriching the soil, like I do. From the outside, it doesn't look nearly as impressive, at first. But when harvest season comes, oh boy, only one garden produces fruit. And why? Because fruit doesn't grow from fences. It grows from healthy soil. So the heart is your soil. Your behavior is your fruit. I hope this is making sense. Praise or validation, it simply reveals what has been growing beneath the surface all along. Every one of us guards something in our heart. The question isn't whether we're guarding it, it's whether we're guarding our character or our image. Every day we choose which one we'll protect. What are you protecting today? This is why the scripture, above all things, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's why you need to understand this, okay? When the scripture tells us to guard our hearts, it isn't telling us to become cold or suspicious or emotionally unavailable. It's telling us to protect the very center of who we are, our convictions, our values, our compassion, and our integrity, and our relationship with the divine, right? Let me ask you, have you ever heard someone say they wear their heart on their sleeve? Oh, so and so wears her heart on her sleeve, or this guy, he wears his heart on his sleeve. You know, what does that really mean? Well, I'll tell you. Usually they mean that the person openly shows their emotions, right? But there's another side to that phrase. When your heart is completely exposed, people can often see what matters to you the most, okay? Some people will honor it, others will try to exploit it, okay? Use it against you. Not everyone celebrates your integrity. Some people are uncomfortable around it because it exposes what they refuse to change within themselves. So they'll lie, they will manipulate, they will betray your trust, they may reject you, criticize you, overlook you, or mistreat you. And this is in your personal life, professional life, whatever. It doesn't matter. If people don't like the integrity that you hold, they will try to dummy it down. Okay? And these are not just painful experiences because it can be painful. Being mistreated in the workplace or at home by people you love, your friends, your family, in a relationship that, you value. When you're betrayed, this thing is painful. They're tests. It's a test, but that test can be extremely painful. Every one of those moments, ask the same question, okay? Will you let what they did change who you are? Think about it. In every situation, because every one of us have experienced this at some level. You know what I mean? Whether we were the perpetrator or the one that was being perpetrated against. I don't want to call us victims because we're not victims. We're only victims if we allow ourselves to become victims. And so, but every one of us have experienced something like this at some level. Did you let that change who you are or who you were? Okay? That's the real attack. The greatest danger isn't that someone lies to you or lies on you. The greatest danger is whether or not their lies cause you to become dishonest, or does it tempt you to become dishonest? The greatest danger isn't that someone betrays you. It's that whether or not that betrayal hardens your heart until you stop trusting everybody else. The greatest danger isn't that someone treats you without kindness. It's that you stop being kind to others. The greatest danger isn't that someone abandons their integrity. It's that you decide whether or not your integrity is no longer worth keeping. The enemy understands something many of us forget. Okay? If he can't always change your circumstances, he'll try to change your heart. Because whatever lives in your heart eventually flows into your words, your decisions, your relationships, and your character. And that's why scripture says, above all else. Not above some things, not above most things, above all else. Guard your heart. Guard your convictions, your humility, your compassion, your integrity. Because the moment you allow someone else's, behavior to determine your character, you've handed them something they never deserved to control. That is huge. Never let another person's choices rewrite the values that the divine has written on your heart. Integrity doesn't need an audience, but it does require protection. And this is why praise or validation can be dangerous. Okay? Most people may think criticism is the greatest test. Criticizing your style, your car, your body, your income, your choices, your beliefs, and so on, whatever. Many of you may think that that's the greatest test, but not always. Sometimes it's just praise. Sometimes praise is. Because praise can quietly become addictive. You start expecting it, you start needing it, measuring yourself by it. And before long, you're no longer serving your purpose, you're serving applause. Some of you listening right now who have, your own platforms may have already begun serving applause without even knowing it. You started out with a small number of likes or followers, then it grew into, let's say, over 1,000. Someone criticized one of your posts, right? Then something dangerous happens. You begin making decisions based on who might notice instead of what is right. You're adjusting your platform to fit someone else's agenda in hopes to continue getting likes and followers, which brings in the wrong type of audience. Now your integrity, the integrity of your platform, it's become performance instead of purpose. Unless you were already doing it for performance and not for purpose. But hopefully we're out here doing the right thing. And that's, putting out information that can help people. Not about performance, about purpose. So be very careful. Let me give you another story. Let me just paint a picture. Let's say you're walking into a building. Let's paint this picture. Let's say you're walking into a building and someone is like maybe a few steps ahead of you, right? So you stop. You hold the door for them. You hold the door for them. And this has probably happened to all of us. But you hold the door for them and they walk through. They never look at you. They never smile. They don't say thank you. Just nothing. Just walk through the door while you're holding it, as if they're entitled to that. What happens next? Do you become irritated? Do you mumble under your breath? You welcome. We've done it. I've done it. Maybe you've experienced that, right? But here's the question. Did you hold the door because it was the honorable thing to do or because you expected appreciation, recognition? You see, seeds, their response didn't reveal their character first, it revealed yours. If their lack of gratitude stole your peace, perhaps your kindness was depending on a reward. Think about it. Integrity doesn't negotiate with recognition. Integrity says, I did what was right because it was right, right? Nothing more, nothing less. See, listen, I can't tell you how many people or how many times I've smiled at people and they didn't smile back, held the door for people and they didn't say thank you, said hello to or gave a genuine compliment and They said nothing back, not even a thank you. But I don't stop doing it because this is who I am. I don't stop because this is who I am. I love who I am. You know, their response, good or bad, doesn't change me, right? So, just to be transparent, that's a real story about holding that door. That actually happened. That actually happened. And so the gentleman who held the door for this other gentleman and his young child, because he had a daughter with him, and so this gentleman, he held the door for this man and his daughter to walk through. And the man did not say thank you. He just simply waltzed through the door with his daughter and kept it moving. so so the gentleman that held the door says, "Wait a minute, did you see that?" And I go, "Yeah, don't worry about it. He's probably just not thinking about it or not really paying attention." And so the gentleman holding the door says to me, "It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about the respect. It's not about praise or validation. It's about the respect." Now, many of you may agree with this, and I kind of agree with it myself. I get it. I get it because praise and respect are not the same. But guess what? They're first cousins, okay? They're not the same. There is an important distinction here. But note, they are close relatives in that they share a synonym, a DNA called admiration. Look it up. Admiration appears in both of those definitions. But the difference is not in the meaning of the words. The difference is found in what happens in your heart after the event. So let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. If someone doesn't say thank you, you may genuinely think, wow, that was disrespectful. And you may be right because failing to acknowledge a kind gesture can be discourteous. But the problem isn't recognizing, that someone was disrespectful. The problem is whether their disrespect changes your character. That's where integrity enters the picture. And I'll give you an example of that also. We have person A and person B. Person A is integrity, person B is reaction. Okay? So person A says, "I believe that was disrespectful. I wish they had acknowledged the gesture, but I'm not going to let their lack of manners change who I am. The next person who comes through that door will receive the same kindness." Notice that they recognize the behavior, right? They didn't excuse the behavior, they recognized it, but they refused to let it dictate their own behavior. Now, person B, the reactor, says, "That's exactly why I don't hold doors for people anymore. People are rude." Now, their behavior has changed because of someone else's behavior. The heart is shifted. Hmm. See, integrity isn't pretending people treated you well. It's not that. Integrity is refusing to become someone different because they didn't treat you well. And that's huge because respect and praise are cousins, but they aren't twins, right? Praise says you did something wonderful. Respect says I recognize your humanity and your dignity. Both are valuable. Neither should determine your character, though. And that's what the scripture is saying. You can acknowledge that the person was disrespectful without allowing your heart to become resentful, bitter, cynical, or hard. That's guarding your heart. Because if enough disrespect turns into a disrespectful person, turns you into a disrespectful person, they've influenced more than your emotions. They've influenced your character. think about your own personal experience where you maybe were kind and someone didn't acknowledge it or you felt disrespected. We've all had them. We've all had them. I said that earlier. We've all had these experiences. And I'll admit, sometimes I've worn my heart on my sleeve. No doubt. I'm human. We're human, but we're aligning and growing in purpose together. So ask yourself about your own experiences and when they didn't acknowledge your kindness, what changed inside of you? Did your opinion of them change? Maybe. And that's understandable. That's understandable because people show you who they are. But did your commitment to kindness change? Hmm. Did you stop treating them with kindness? That's the important part. Now we're talking about integrity. Where's your integrity? So, simply put, integrity doesn't mean you ignore disrespect. It means you refuse to let someone else's disrespect become the reason you abandon your own character. It means you live from conviction instead of validation. Okay? It doesn't make you weak. Actually, it makes you the stronger person. It makes you strong. People of integrity aren't emotionless. They appreciate encouragement, they appreciate gratitude, they appreciate being seen, but they don't require it. Okay? Their compass isn't external, it's internal. Their standard isn't applause. It's not the applause, it's conviction. When nobody is watching, they're still honest. That's integrity. When nobody is clapping, they're still faithful. When nobody says thank you, they're still kind. Why? Because they aren't acting from performance, they're living from principle. They're living from principle. Okay? Maybe today the divine isn't removing the praise from your life. Maybe he's testing your relationship with it. If no one congratulated you, would you still build? You know, those of you who have platforms or whatever, if nobody hit like or hit subscribe or follow, would you still build? If no one celebrated your success, would you still serve? If no one shared your post, would you still speak the truth? And if no one thanked you, would you still be generous? Because integrity doesn't need an audience, it only needs conviction. And see, here's what I've learned. Here's what I've learned. Character is built in private long before it's recognized in public. And the people who change the world aren't usually chasing applause, they're chasing purpose. When praise comes, receive it with humility. Receive it with humility. When it doesn't, keep walking, keep serving, keep loving, keep doing what's right because your reward isn't determined by who noticed you. Okay? It's determined by who called you if you're catching the ball I'm throwing. Okay? If you're catching the ball I'm throwing, your reward isn't determined by who notices you, it's determined by who called you. And with that said, C's, this has been another episode of Watering the Seed. And I'm Coach D. Jackson. And remember, don't build your life around being noticed. Build your life around being faithful. Because when your roots run deep in integrity, you won't need an audience to keep growing. You won't need that. And until next time, pressure reveals what you're made of. Remember that. Pressure reveals what you're made of. Praise or validation, it reveals what you're living for. Okay? Now let's stop wearing our hearts on our sleeves, seeds, and get out there and change the world.